You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
You're listening to episode 150 of the Soul Forge podcast.
Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Shawn Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Hey, Soul Warriors, it's Shawn back at you here with another exciting episode of the Soul Forge podcast. It's episode 150. That means we got to do something spectacular, something amazing, something awe-inspiring, something wonderful, something that keeps you coming back to the Forge of Souls. I'm here with my girlfriend, Julie. It's her second time on the Soul Forge. Say hello, Julie.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Are you excited to be here?
Nervous.
Nervous? What the heck are you nervous about?
I don't know.
It's because
I've only done this once.
You've done it once. Mm-hmm. And now this is number two.
Number two.
But it's not going to be shitty.
Absolutely not.
No, it's going to be spectacular. You have to quit rubbing my hair, though, because... No, it's all behind the scenes. It's good, because the microphone picks it up, and then it's all, like, scrunchily and stuff. It's okay. I'm not giving you shit.
You're giving me shit.
I'm not giving you shit. Okay, so what we're talking about this week on Soul Forge, because it's episode 150... it's like almost like an anniversary episode. It's not quite, because the 3 years would be like an anniversary episode, but 150 is like a milestone. It's like a marker. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Okay, so you'd agreed to come on the show, and we're going to talk about my goals when I first envisioned the podcast, and if I have achieved said goals or not. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, good. All right. So when I first thought of the podcast, I was like, what the heck am I going to do? Because I had the Rusted Robot podcast, and that's been going since January 2014. And how many of those episodes have you listened to?
The Rusted Robot?
Yeah.
1. Maybe 2.
Yeah. You're not into the geek things?
No, I'm not. I'm more into the Soul Forge one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've known each other approximately 3 months. Mm-hmm. And Soul Forge has been going for approximately 3 years. So I thought that was kind of like a time compression kind of thing. It doesn't really add up to anything, but it's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. The number 3.
Yep.
The Soul Forge is brought to you by the number 3. No, it's not. It's not brought to you by anything. Now, what I wanted to see, it's just ridiculous. That's why you're supposed to laugh. It's fun. It's podcasting. It's not serious. It's not like I have 10,000 subscribers and I get sponsors and I have to be super. What is the word?
Well, what if this episode gets you sponsored?
Professional. I'm not super professional. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not. It's just for fun. See, because what happened was I started the Rusted Robot, and I was like, you know what? Sometimes I want to talk about things that aren't so geeky. I'm like, I need another podcast. Mm-hmm. So the Soul Forge was born. And you've listened to how many episodes? Approximately.
A lot.
Most of them? Lots of them? Some of them?
Maybe 15?
15?
Something like that.
That's it?
So far?
Yeah.
I think I've done a lot of it in the beginning. When we first started talking.
Yes.
Because I didn't know you, right?
You didn't know me, and you thought the best way to get to know me would be to listen to my innermost personal thoughts.
Yeah.
And all my verbal diarrhea.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think when you heard some of those episodes? Were you scared off?
No. Well, that's what you thought. It was going to scare me off, but actually it didn't.
It didn't?
No, it didn't.
Huh.
No, because I got to know you as a person and some of your life experiences.
Yes. And see, I started it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start talking about things that people don't talk about. Like, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sometimes people just are uncomfortable, or they're afraid. And I was like, I am going to put myself out there and talk about the things and see what happens.
Because that's not always easy.
It's not easy. None of this is easy. It's been a very difficult process. I'm like, I don't know if I should release this episode or not.
The whole world
Yeah, anybody in the
actually
world
knows.
could listen to this.
Yeah.
Not everybody in the world has listened to it, but people from around the world have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. The one funny thing is, Brother Curtis always tells me, you should not record these episodes. You should not do the Soul Forge. You shouldn't put that you shouldn't put that stuff about yourself out there into the world. And I say, Curtis, my brother, I have to. Because if I don't talk about these things, who will?
True.
So I do.
True.
Actually, you know what? Before we get into the deep, dark discussion about this, we should play a podcast promo for another podcast here on the ESO network. What do you think about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, here it comes.
You left the crew from Earth Station Who with the doctor in her prison cell and everyone else trapped in Chibnall hell.
Never fear, the way is clear with the crew of Earth Station Who right here. We save the day in the best possible way by giving you all new episodes.
We mean the good stuff, classic stories, big finish, fan favorites too, coming to you throughout the year with happy hoovy and cheer.
And a smidge of super bonus Graham, so never fear.
You can find Earth Station Who wherever you listen to fine podcasts. Remember to tell all your friends.
Except for Ryan.
And leave feedback and subscribe. Earth Station Who is a proud member of the ESO network.
All right, that was fantastic, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, see, when I started the Soul Forge podcast, we were not a part of the ESO network quite yet.
Okay.
That came along sometime, maybe 2018. Around this time, probably sometime in April 2018, I was browsing through the Facebook pages and I saw something called the Earth Station 1 podcast. And I'm like, that's a cool name. And I was looking through their website and it said, you want to be part of a network? And I'm like, you know what? I do want to be part of a network. I'd like to join a team. So I sent them an email. Mike got back to me and we did some Geek Seat stuff and we got to know each other and we put the podcast on the ESO network. Well,
I didn't even know what a podcast was.
you didn't, did you?
When you first said podcast, I asked my friend, I said, what's podcasting? She's like, you don't know what that is?
They didn't know?
Yes, she knew because her ex-husband actually did that.
Did a podcast?
He listens to podcasts.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
but I didn't.
Lots of people still don't know what a podcast is.
I didn't know what it was.
And the best way to describe it is, it's an internet radio show.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty much what it is. And now you're on one.
Yeah.
and you're excited about it, I could tell.
I'm very excited.
Oh, yes. Okay. So when I first started, I haven't listened to those early episodes. Have you listened to like from the beginning episodes or just the recent ones when we first met?
The recent ones.
Okay.
The beginning, I have to think.
Yeah, because if I go back, actually, let me pull up my app. And if people don't know, they can actually go to soulforgepodcast.com on their cell phones, and they can download the Quick Launch app, and they can listen to the show right from there, which is pretty cool. Or on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or any of those things like Spotify and the like.
Okay.
Let's see here. Going to the archives, first episode was July 30th of 2017. And it was just the first episode was a quick introduction into what the Soul Forge is, the idea behind the concept, and what it hopes to achieve. Delve into what we mean by soul. So
No, that one I didn't listen
you
to.
didn't listen to that one. I think that's only 5 minutes or so. And then if we go on, the second, actually lots of episodes the next month. Episode 2 was just who your host was, a quick overview of my life, schooling and dating. And then episode 3 was my love and dating history. Did you listen to that one?
No.
Oh, probably a good thing. Don't listen to it now.
You're going to make me want to listen to it now.
Episode 4 was What's in a Name? Because I spent a lot of time coming up with the name of the Soul Forge podcast. I thought maybe Life Garage, like go fix yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But almost like a swear, like go fix yourself. It was an idea. I didn't know how to translate that into audio, so I didn't do that. But that was a fun episode. Got a lot of listens on that one. What's in the name behind the thing? Episode 5 was when I started actually getting into different concepts, like what is happiness? And then episode 6 was how to make a decision. Episode 7 was fatherhood. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Okay. Episode 8 was 3 wishes. What would you wish for? I wanted to get all my thoughts and ideas out there, I'm not going to go through all 100 episodes and some, just saying what each episode was, but that was the idea. Just, you know what? I have this idea, and I just want to talk about it. And I can't put it on the Rusted Robot because it's not geeky enough. So that's what I did.
It's not geeky at all.
It's not geeky. There have been some episodes that were geeky, like I explained Star Trek to my son in one of the episodes. But for the most part, they haven't been very geeky. Episode 9 was anger and what's your angry style. So I did some research, actually, which is something I never did for the Rusted Robot. But in the early days of Soulforge, I was like, I want to get these concepts out there and talk about things and how they relate to me. Apathy, meh. And then a feeling of loss. Oh, that was all the losses that I had suffered in my life. So that was a heavy episode, and probably the most downloaded episode, because everybody can relate to loss.
Yeah.
And people are afraid to talk about it, but everybody wants to know what everybody else feels about it.
Yeah, because then you think you're the only one going through stuff, right?
Exactly. So I actually did 10 episodes in August. So that was quite a bit. If I go to September, this is the last of it, I think, that I'll go through. But I had a birthday in September, so I said, hey, let's party. It's your birthday. So I did a whole birthday episode. Episode 13 was a really fun one. This is when me and Brother Robin and Brother Curtis went on our road trip, and we went to see Blondie and Garbage in concert, and we went to Cedar Point. And before the podcast had even come out, we sat in the hotel room asking each other questions, mostly them asking me. So this is one where you can learn a lot about me too, because it was mostly Curtis asking me stuff, and it was a lot of interesting questions and things that I didn't want to answer, and all kinds of fun stuff. So everybody who's listened to that, episode 13, had a lot of fun. And then episode 14 was my first guest, where I talked to Heather about anxiety and depression, because she was going through some heavy stuff at the time. So that's what the idea behind the podcast was. Talk about concepts like anger and happiness, who I am as a person, and then I wanted to start getting into other things. And that's what I've done so far. You were on the episode about, what was it, the lockdown, right? About being
when it first started,
safe and whatnot. And that has actually affected a lot of different podcasts. Because what else is there to talk about? All the pop culture stuff has gone away. There's no new movies being produced, nothing at the theater, everything's closed down. So for Rusted Robot Podcast, I can't talk about anything. So I've been doing all kinds of weird and different things on that. You haven't been on one of those yet.
You're very creative, though.
You think I'm very creative?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah? Okay, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's good to know. And you said I can talk a lot.
Yeah, you do. You can have good conversations.
I try.
Unlike me, I'm an introvert too. But,
well,
I mean, I have, I guess, trouble expressing.
You know what? Before I started podcasting 6.5 years ago, I was very bad at it as well. But ever since I started and I've met people from around the world and whatnot, I've really come out of my shell, I think. If you would have met me 7 or 8 years ago, you wouldn't recognize me today.
Oh, wow.
Well, you might, because I'd still have the goatee and stuff. But just the way I behave and the way I act, I think.
You have to come out of that shell.
Yeah.
But I did come out of my shell when I actually moved out of Timmins.
Yeah, that's right, because you were born and raised here in Timmins.
Yeah.
And then you moved away to Ottawa.
Yeah.
And how long did you live there for?
8 years.
8 years. And that opened you up to a whole new world?
Oh, yeah.
How so?
That's... I grew as a person, just like all these different cultures that are out there that I didn't know was out there.
Because there's so much more there than there is here.
All the stores and that we don't have here. All the people.
From all over the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I came out of my shell there.
That's good.
Yeah, and I brought in my way of thinking.
You broadened it?
Yeah.
Because you were more narrow-minded because of
Yes.
And you couldn't be?
No.
Because of, what would you say was the biggest cause of that? Maybe just the exposure to so many different ways of life and cultures? Or...
Well, I guess when you live in a small city, you're brought up or raised a certain way, and that's how you're supposed to think, or that's how you're supposed to act, or this is what it is. But then when you go out somewhere where it's actually big and full of culture and different things, your mind is like, oh, wow.
So
that existed.
There are other ways of doing things. But you didn't know that until you went away.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing that people should do. They should always leave their hometown, just for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because as everybody knows, I was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, and then I went away to university in North Bay. And then I lived there off and on for 8 years. And then 17 years ago, I moved to Timmins. And I've been here ever since.
Thank God.
Thank God?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Because if you wouldn't be here, I wouldn't have met you.
Oh, that's true. It's very unlikely that we would have met because you didn't know what podcasts were, so we couldn't have met on the podcast.
Absolutely.
You could have emailed me. You could have found the Soul Forge somehow on Facebook per se, because there is a Facebook page for the Soul Forge podcast, and all the information's on there, all the episode links, and then you could have emailed soulforgepodcast@gmail.com and say, hey, I like your style there, man. How come you live so far away? Why don't you come up here and visit me in Timmins?
Right.
You could have done that.
Right.
You think you would have been bold enough to do that?
No.
No?
No.
Probably not, eh?
No.
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 It's not a thing that happens. I'm sure it has happened, maybe, but I don't know.
No. I wouldn't be that bold.
Not you, but maybe somebody would be.
Oh, I'm sure there is people out there like that.
Yes. And that's what I've tried to do with the podcast as well, is get interviews from different people around the world. Like at one point I interviewed Muggsy, and he is, I guess, he's in Australia, and he's an aspiring rapper. He wants to be the Australian Eminem, and he just contacted me out of the blue to do an interview. So we did that. And then I think the week after that was Lauren Nicole Peters, who went by the name Mediterra at the time, and she was a sex goddess from San Diego. I think that's episode 49, but she contacted me a few months ago to ask me to take the episode down because
Really?
she was not that person anymore.
Oh.
Yeah. So I re-recorded it, and I changed the title to One of Our Episodes is Missing, and just explained what had happened. That episode is gone. I still have the MP3 file in my computer, but it's not online anymore.
It's not the person she is now, but she was that person.
She was
before.
that person, but she wanted all vestiges of her old self taken down.
Okay.
So I didn't want to, but I did, because I'm good like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, have you listened to any of the older episodes where I used to do future shout-outs to people who had just discovered the podcast?
No.
Okay. I don't know when I started it and why I stopped it, but at the beginning of episodes, what I used to do was say, oh, and I'd just like to say hello to Hector, who discovers the podcast in 2043, and blah, 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 blah. And I'd just go off and make up this whole thing about this fictional person who existed sometime in the future and discovered the podcast and how it changed their life. So I must have done that for 10 or 15 episodes, and then I just stopped. It was just one of those things. Because the podcasts themselves are an ever-changing form of entertainment. They evolve as they go on.
Okay.
And if you had listened from the very, very beginning, you would see how it's changed and morphed over time. Actually, one of these days, I have a long-time listener who I may have mentioned to you before, Richard from Australia. Mm-hmm. I have. He's been listening ever since the early days of Rusted Robot podcast.
Okay.
And then when I switched over and started doing Soul Forge as well, he listened to all of those, and he's got some great comments. If you ever check,
I'm gonna go from the start. I guess what I was doing, I was looking at your titles on your podcast. I was like,
yes.
oh, this is like catching my eye, right?
It was intriguing.
Like I wanna know more.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And nothing has scared you so far?
Absolutely not.
Well, that's good.
No,
Excellent.
I'm still here.
You are still here.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm happily still here.
Ooh, even better.
Oh.
That's terrific. Another funny thing was when I first started the podcast, I didn't want to have any swears in the podcast. That was one thing I never wanted to have because, you know what, maybe kids would be listening to the podcast and you don't want to corrupt them. But then as I thought about it, there are some episodes where I wouldn't want kids to be listening.
Yeah, there's some that are pretty...
Pretty risque.
Yeah.
Like the masturbation handy guide
yeah,
episode.
I was surprised about that one. I was like, what is this? Let's listen to this.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that that was one that I wanted to do, but I was like, I am not going to do a solo masturbation episode because that's just too meta, and I don't know, I would feel ridiculous talking about it.
Yeah.
And then Robin and I were talking about it, and we're like, let's do that episode. I'm like, yeah, but this is the two brothers talking about jerking off. Not a good idea. So
No.
So then I got two girls who actually volunteered to be on the thing.
Yeah.
And there was four of us, and it turned out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, it did.
So
It did. It was very interesting.
because that's one of the things people don't talk about that I wanted to bring up. So there you go.
God.
So would you recommend the podcast to people that you know?
As funny as it sounds, there's a lot of personal stuff on there
that you don't
that
want.
I don't know if it's. I feel like I don't know if it's appropriate for them. Like at first, my friend wanted to listen to it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna know about my boyfriend. She's gonna know all about him." Right?
Yeah.
Which is like pretty profound, and I don't know. There's just some things about people that you're with that you don't, and not everybody knows about, but everybody knows about, right?
Right, because I put myself out
you're
there.
out there.
Like I've zippered down my chest and displayed my organs for all the world
But
to
like
see.
if it be on something, I don't know, about something that's happening now, or a topic of like problems in life or something.
Yeah.
You know, like, and somebody's going through it. Well, you know what? Yeah, I would say, okay, well, go listen to this podcast.
Like, because like sometimes I will do a topic like the current events, like when Greta Thunberg and the climate crisis was really in the spotlight. I did a whole episode about the climate change girls. So sometimes I will do things that are happening immediately, and sometimes it's just me talking about personal things, like the time that my dad was mad at me.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I do this episode? Because I had done an episode all about money. And then his girlfriend made him listen to it or got him to listen to it. And then she messaged me and said, "Oh, your dad's mad at you because of the money episode." And I didn't even know they listened to the podcast.
They do.
Yeah, apparently they do. And so my dad hasn't spoken to me since, even after I did the My Dad is Mad at Me episode, even after his oldest sister died and I sent him condolences, he still hasn't reached out to me. So I don't know what the issue is, what the problem is. Like,
I don't know. Only he knows that.
only he knows that, but he won't talk to me, and I can only do so much.
Yeah, you gotta wait till he reaches out to you now.
That's what I was thinking. And yeah, so I talked to my son about my issues with my father. I thought that was kind of a neat way to do it. He's 14. I think he's old enough to handle that kind of emotional turmoil.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the podcast in a nutshell. Have you learned a lot from it? Like not just about me, but
about
like,
you.
about me for sure, but about life in general. Like, has it helped you in your life in any way? Like, it was supposed to be.
Yes, like there's a lot of there's some topics that you've actually talked about, like being an empath.
Yes,
I didn't know I was that.
You didn't know you were an empath until the episode that I did about being an empath. Okay, good, because that's what it's all about, guiding you through life.
Or like, there's some on like anxiety and depression and all that stuff.
Yeah. Hidden topics that people are interested in.
And to me, it's interesting.
Good.
Right?
Because
I like that kind of stuff.
You're all about the reality.
Yes. Reality. Yes.
Yes. Because as much as I try to get you to watch Star Trek and stuff, you just don't care.
I don't, because it's not real. Right?
You'd rather watch true crime shows.
If it'd be real, then I guess. But that's where you're creative, right? And I'm not creative. Like, I don't.
Not in that way.
No.
Right. You're creative in other ways.
Yes.
Yes.
But not like that.
Not like that. And that's okay. See, I don't need you to listen to the Rested Robot podcast. It's okay. Not everybody's into the same thing.
I can play it, but it's like it's not gonna.
Yeah, like we've listened to it together before, but you don't understand.
I don't understand any of it
because you don't watch those things.
No, I don't.
Right, because that's a This Week in Pop Culture kind of show. But Soul Forge,
that one there,
this
one here, I like to listen to every week when it comes out.
That's good.
I listen to it like your brother's last week.
Yes, the one where we gave the update on what his life has been like for the year in Timmins.
Yeah. See, I like stuff like that.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you do. That's what it's all about. That's pretty much it for this week. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, thanks for being a co-host. And was it that nerve-wracking, or were you okay? Would you do another one?
I think I would. I would do another one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, again, you get anxiety as soon as you say, "Okay, you know what, Julie, we're going to do a podcast." Well, my anxiety just goes off.
Of course, I get it. And like I told you, I still get nervous recording 6.5 years after doing this, 500 some episodes later between all the different podcasts that I've hosted or guested on. You still get nervous. And like I told you, when I first started, I did a lot of research. I had notes, all kinds of stuff. Lately, I wing it because it's just flow of consciousness. And it's more fun that way. And maybe it's not as prepared as some could be. Mm-hmm. But it's that down-home country feel that people like.
Yep.
I think. I'm hoping anyway.
Coming out natural.
Yeah,
Type of thing.
yeah. And sometimes you get stuck for words and you can't think. But that's what editing is for.
Yep.
That's right.
This is real life.
It's real life. Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you again for being a co-host.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Anytime. Listeners, thanks for coming by and listening to episode 150 of the Soul Forge podcast. Take care. Join the Facebook page. What else can they do? They can leave a 5-star review in the podcatcher of their choice. They can find us on Spotify and TuneIn and Stitcher, all the different places. What I really want you to do is join the Facebook page and find me on YouTube. Check out YouTube. See, I'm fucking up. See, I told you. And I'm going to leave this in because this is the podcast. This is the end part. It's always a hard time to tell listeners what to do. See?
If your face isn't red, I don't know what it is.
Is it red? Is it red? It might be red. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got for this week. Take care. And remember, the Soul Forge podcast, it's like sex in your fucking mouth. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Soul Forge podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we hope you'll tune in again next time. Remember that you can visit soulforgepodcast.com for all of our social media links, and don't forget to share the show with everyone you know. The Soul Forge podcast is your best source for living your best life.
Think about it.
If you're loving this podcast, you should tell a friend about it.
Spread the word about podcasts you think they would enjoy. There's something for everyone, from entertainment and lifestyle
To news and politics
and more. Share it on social media.
Believe it or not, some people don't know how great podcasts are.
or even how to find and listen to them.
You can help change that with a click. Tell your friends about your favorite podcast.
Thanks for spreading the word.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.